your concert ticket could cost you a lot more than you think, thanks to the Ticketmaster breach.
Hey Mike, so I hear you have a story about a breach?
Yeah, so this is actually an evolving story, Stan. A few weeks ago, Ticketmaster, who's one of the largest ticket resale and distributor companies in the world, announced that they had a data breach that affected about 5% of their users. So things like name, address, payment information, so credit card, and their Ticketmaster credentials were stolen. Affected about, again, 5%. It didn't affect any of the North America customers. And it started in late September 2017 and was cleared up just last month in June. What's interesting, though, is the breach wasn't to Ticketmaster itself, to its infrastructure, its site, but one of its third-party providers, this company called Inventa. And they provide basically the chatbot functionality that you see when you go and visit their webpage.
Although Ticketmaster themselves didn't have any vulnerability, the fact was that they had contracted with a third party for a chatbot, and that chatbot infected the Ticketmaster customers.
RiskIQ, a few days ago, actually published a report, an update, where this Ticketmaster breach, they thought it was more isolated, is actually part of a much larger campaign for these, they call digital credit card skimming. So we're pretty familiar with traditional skimming, so point of sale, things like ATMs or gas station pumps. But this particular type of skimming is more affected to online shopping, like shopping carts, or again, things like chatbots. And RiskIQ attributed this to a threat group called MageCart, and they've known about them since late 2016. And they speculate that they've actually compromised up to 800 different e-commerce type sites, again, through these real third parties that provide these different, again, shopping cart and chatbot services.
Did they mention if the compromise was like of some internal database, or was everything from the chatbot itself?
Bentu said that they had, the attackers had actually compromised one of their front-end servers where they stored this code that Ticketmaster had loaded in and modified some of the live JavaScript files. So as Ticketmaster was interfacing with their services, they pulled in this compromised code.
So it didn't matter whether the users were using the chat function or not. They were basically infiltrating the entire website?
That's right. So it's actually a funny comment that I think one of the executives made was that Inventu had customized this code specifically to Ticketmaster, and they didn't know they were using it on their payment page, and they would advise against it due to some security threat. So it's interesting. And what I find also interesting is, we talk a lot about scanning your software, vulnerability reporting, but they wouldn't have found this at all. This is an external site hosted, so it's not an out-of-date library. It's not an issue with Ticketmaster itself. It's, again, pulling in this software from, cross-site.
It's important to have good supplier agreements to understand exactly all of the interfaces you have between yourself and your vendors.
You really need to make sure that you extend your own security practices beyond your own enterprise and make sure that it extends to any suppliers that you have.
I'm just impressed how you can take a chatbot and potentially, I don't know if this happened or not, but inject code like its own chat messages by the adversary to ask for additional information during the conversation. So the story made me think of something like that, where an adversary might start asking you personal questions via this chatbot. And I think, this is not something we think about, but as you think about using chatbots out there, it's like it's not a personal thing. You're talking to a robot. You kind of know you're talking to a robot. You kind of know it's asking you questions and you have to answer them. So if you were able to inject code and ask specific type of questions, I think people are not really trained to question that. We all kind of know, hey, if you get to a web form and it's got some extra information that you're not used to it asking you, everybody kind of knows, don't fill that out. But if the chatbot is asking you these personal questions a little bit at a time, well, I guess.
Well, hopefully if it's asking you for your mother's maiden name, you know not to put it in.
Yeah, I think we'll have to watch out for that.
I think in today's day and age, just like we need to look at email attachments and everything we look at and we get to say, does this really look legit? You have to consider that also when it comes to chats.